Welcome to ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston.
Welcome to ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston. I'm Abigail, your host, and today I'm joined by Allecia L. Pottinger. Thanks for joining me again today.
Thank you for having me, Abigail.
So my first question for you is, what are the most common reasons family court orders like custody or child support are violated?
That is a good question. Violation of a court order is when there is clear direction of what a parent's responsibility is under that court order. There's not clear direction as to what the party should do, then we have an issue of clarification and non-enforcement. And so for child support, you have certain things that you have hurdles that you have to overcome in order to have a modification in the child support, either upward or downward. And that's typically at least the child support change needs to be at least $100 or 20% within the last order, from the last order. So 20% up or down if you're trying to modify up or down, or $100 up or down if you're trying to modify up or down. And so that is how you get to finding that a person has violated the order if they're not paying and they have clear direction what amount they're supposed to pay and by what date they're supposed to pay. So here in Texas, it typically starts with the first of the month. Sometimes you'll see orders that have the 15th of the month that someone is supposed to pay. And if they don't pay by the 1st or the 15th, they technically have violated. But the court will give them about 30 days. Let's say that the order says you should pay by January 1st. If the person doesn't pay by January 31st, at that point, they're in violation of the court order. So you get kind of, as long as you're within that month, you kind of get a little pass if you pay. But if you wait until February 15th and then you pay, you're going to be in violation of the order. And that's just a straight, whether you paid it or you paid it on time, when you paid it, how you paid it, and to whom you paid it. A lot of violations end up happening when a parent sends the money directly to the other parent versus going through the Attorney General's office to make that payment. Because the court order will say, pay the Attorney General's office, not pay the other parent. And the other parent doesn't have to claim that money if you don't send it the way the court order states that you should send it. And so that's something that ends up happening a lot when you're dealing with child support. Now with visitation is a lot trickier. And why I say that is that most court orders will say pick up and drop off is from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., not 6:05, not 6:30, not 5:55. It is 6 p.m. And a lot of times if a person doesn't show up at 6 p.m., is not there at 6 p.m. on that date, you don't have an enforcement because you weren't following the court orders. So a lot of times you'll find parents will withhold children. I don't care what the court says. I'm not letting my child go over there. As long as you have that girlfriend or boyfriend over there, that's not going to happen. At that particular point, they are definitely violating the court order because it doesn't say kids get to have visitation as long as the other side doesn't have a boyfriend and girlfriend. So at that particular point, they have violated the order and you can get that enforced.
Let's talk more about that. What legal actions can be taken if one party fails to follow a family order, and how does that enforcement process work?
So if one person doesn't follow the order, what ends up happening is the other party has to enforce their rights. And that is when they go to court, they're asking the court to enforce their rights. That enforcement process typically is a quasi-criminal proceeding, which means that the other side gets to have rights, get to have their rights read, the right to remain silent, rights for jury trial. They have all types of different rights because they could possibly go to jail for the violation of that court order. And so what you will find is that process, once you file, you have to be very technical about filing and what it is that you say. You need to track what that order says. You need to track what the person did that was in violation of that order. And once that happens and you show up in court and you show the court, look, this is what happened. This is what you ordered. Here's the court order. This is what you ordered. And this is how they violated that order. The court will make a determination that they will enforce their prior order, or they'll say it's not really enforceable right now. Let me clarify it so we get an order that is enforceable, and they'll redraft it in language that's enforceable. And then at that particular time, you redo the order. But in certain situations where there's a clear violation, they can send the party to jail. They'll do that more so with child support than they will with visitation schedules. I don't know why, but bottom line, they will send persons to jail. And that's part of the process. It's fairly quick because it's just whether you either followed or you didn't follow the court order. So, yeah.
And how does a family law attorney help clients enforce a child custody or visitation order when the other parent isn't complying?
That, like I was saying, enforcements are so technical that you really need an experienced attorney to enforce your rights. I've literally seen sometimes attorneys not put in the right language and not say exactly what the person, how the other person violated the order. And I get those dismissed. So you have to be, because this is a quasi criminal proceeding, you have to be very technical about what is in the order, how it was violated, when it was violated, and what remedy you're seeking. And in order to do that, you need an experienced attorney on your side to help you with that.
So in cases where child support payments aren't being made, what steps can an attorney take to ensure the paying parent meets their financial obligations? And what penalties or consequences might a person face if they repeatedly fail to comply with those orders?
Well, what an attorney would do is to file an enforcement action against the other parent that is not paying. And that enforcement will say, you didn't pay on this date, this date, this date. You were supposed to pay. Bottom line, you didn't pay. And you present that to the court, and the court will render a judgment, will also render contempt. And what a contempt does, it says that I'm going to hold you in contempt. You're going to pay attorney fees for the other side for having to bring the action. You're going to have to pay the fees that you didn't, the child support that you didn't already pay. They may even reduce that child support that was owed to a judgment that can be enforced and put a lien on property or other things, like garnish your checking account and garnish your wages based on up to 50% of your net income. Or you could be thrown in jail for not paying your child support. You got a lot of remedies that you can go through in order to get child support.
It sounds like it. So how does the enforcement of family court orders differ depending on whether it's a divorce order, a child support order, or a custody order?
It doesn't vary. The order of the court is an order of the court. And if you're violating it, you're violating it, and the court is not going to like it. They're not going to be happy that you violated their court order, whether it's child support, custody, visitation, you name it, they're just not going to be happy. And they will enforce those orders.
So let's wrap up today. How can a family law attorney help modify a court order if there's a legitimate reason for noncompliance, such as a significant change in circumstance for either parent?
At that particular point, that the experienced attorney would know whether they need to file an enforcement action or need to file a modification for the other side. Because you're right, it may be a legitimate reason why the other parent is violating the order. Again, I've talked about, if there's a sex offender, there's a CPS case that just opened up an active in investigation, that might be a reason for a parent to violate the order. Outside of that, you have to have some very compelling reasons to violate a court order. And it may be time at that particular point to file a modification versus continuing to violate the order. You can, get a restraining order and no access order fairly quickly if you are showing some egregious circumstances, especially when it comes to kiddos. The courts are going to protect the kiddos.
As they should. Well, thank you again for joining me today. This was fantastic information.
Thank you, Abigail, for having me.
And thank you for joining us for ALP Corner, Family Law in the Heart of Houston. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review on our channel.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.